particularly in the southwest. Across much of Wales and central England, dry but cloudy to start. Brighter across much of Northern Ireland, Northern England and southern Scotland. Across the rest of Scotland, though, quite cloudy, outbreaks of rain, and some of the rain could be a little bit heavy at times as well. As we go through the day, some of that rain across parts of Scotland, well, that's going to continue, may edge a little bit further southwards towards the borders area. Meanwhile, the heavier, more persistent rain in the south, that pushes its way northwards, and that's going to spread across Wales, the Midlands and into northern England later on as well. It is still mild out there at the moment, especially so towards the southeast. Once that rain clears away, there'll be some brightness, and so we're looking at temperatures reaching around 16 Celsius. Then Thursday, a bit of a messy day for many places. Some rain across parts of Scotland, northern England and Northern Ireland. Bit of rain in the far south of England as well. Drier, brighter across the Midlands and Wales and the far north of Scotland, seeing a few showers. And then on Friday, colder air pushing into northern parts. Meanwhile, some heavy rain and strong winds affecting some southern areas. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the nation. Because the truth matters, and so do you.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the M8 junction 3 westbound, a broken down vehicle is restricting the onslip. The M4 westbound from junction 40 to 46 is congested. In Derbyshire, the A38 southbound faces 30-minute delays. The M4 westbound between junctions 13 and 14 in West Berkshire is significantly disrupted due to a collision. In Surrey, the M25 clockwise between junction 5 and 6 has delays, closing 2 lanes due to a broken down vehicle. And on the trains, disruptions are ongoing between Birmingham New Street and Cheltenham Spa and to Gatwick Express services. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
You could win your entire Christmas on us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £30,000 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also a further £10,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £1,000 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag, so there's something for everyone under the tree. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. On this 107th anniversary of the armistice, we'll first discuss, is Donald Trump right to sue the BBC, and does he have grounds? We'll talk about the Epping judgment. The government have won. The Bell Hotel in Epping will stay open. We will have an exclusive statement from the father of the 14-year-old victim. And we will discuss a bit of World War I Farage theory. I have a theory about the armistice. I think it was a terrible mistake and probably the worst mistake of the 20th century. All of that and much more after the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Good evening to you. 7 o'clock here in the GB newsroom. The Culture Secretary has described the BBC as a light on the hill for people here and across the world. Lisa Nandy's been addressing the Commons about the crisis engulfing the broadcaster, saying the BBC's faced criticism from all sides for its coverage of highly contentious and contested issues, but MPs should consider what's at stake. It comes after the outgoing BBC Director General Tim Davie told staff the corporation must stand up for its journalism, a day after President Trump threatened to sue for $1 billion. Ms Nandy says the corporation must uphold the highest standards, but has warned against sustained attacks.
It is by far the most widely used and trusted source of news in the United Kingdom. At a time when the lines are being dangerously blurred between fact and opinion, news and polemic, the BBC stands apart. It is a light on the hill for people here and across the world. Trusted news and high-quality programming is essential to our democratic and cultural life. All of us in this House should value it, uphold it and fiercely defend it.
An NHS manager who sexually abused and raped young girls after grooming them on Snapchat has been jailed for 28 years. Paul Lipscomb pleaded guilty to 34 offences against 6 girls he met on the social media platform, including sexual grooming, sexual assault and 2 counts of rape of a child under 13. Police discovered he had used fake names and lied about his age to win over victims. Snapchat says it's committed to combating sexual exploitation of young people. The Justice Secretary's confirmed 3 mistakenly released prisoners remain at large. David Lammy told MPs none of the 3 are convicted sex offenders, but said a potential 4th release in error earlier this month is being investigated. The Justice Secretary's been facing questions in the Commons after his department confirmed earlier that 91 prisoners have been freed by mistake since April this year. Last week, it emerged 2 inmates were freed in error following the high-profile wrongful release of Harish Kabatu, the now deported migrant at the heart of protests in Epping. Meanwhile, the High Court's rejected an attempt to prevent asylum seekers being housed at that hotel in Epping. Epping Forest District Council had claimed the owners of the Bell Hotel were in breach of planning rules. Mr Justice Mould dismissed the claim on Tuesday, ruling an injunction was not an appropriate means of enforcing planning control. The hotel became the scene of protests earlier this year when a migrant living there was convicted of sexually assaulting a woman and a teenage girl. The Home Office insists the government will close all asylum hotels and says they are working to find alternative accommodation. A woman caught with £5 billion worth of bitcoins been jailed to 11 years and 8 months for money laundering. Kian Jimin vanished and went on the run after officers seized more than 61,000 bitcoins in a raid of her rented £5 million home near Hampstead Heath in North London, as she was caught when police raided an Airbnb in York last April. Police said she fled China in 2017 and arrived in the UK on a false passport and then used stolen funds from thousands of Chinese pensioners. It is the country's biggest cryptocurrency seizure. Finally, the King and Princess of Wales have attended services to mark Armistice Day as events have taken place across the country. Kate was at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire as the end of World War I was commemorated with a 2-minute silence. Queen Camilla attended a wreath-laying ceremony at Paddington Station in London. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more later. Now it's over to Nigel.
Well, it's all been the most unholy mess over the last few days. The BBC, 2 major resignations, a huge debate about its future, including the licence fee. And by the way, these people haven't gone because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the final straw that's done it. I think there are many of us that feel that the Hamas statements have been taken as gospel. We've seen decades of bias on immigration, on Europe, on climate change, on net zero. Indeed, 20 years ago, the Wilson Report admitted that the BBC had biases in these areas, and 20 years on, here we are. But to me, the really interesting thing is Donald Trump now threatening to sue the BBC for up to $1 billion. He's going to sue them in Florida unless by Friday he gets what he considers to be a full and frank apology. Is Trump right to sue? It's a really good debate. Let me know your thoughts. #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. And I have to say, I did meet Trump on Friday night and spent a few minutes with him. And his basic thought was, is this how you treat your best ally in the world? And I get it, because what Panorama did by putting together two different clips from an hour apart in a speech was totally outrageous. Let's begin by examining the law in America, where it seems to me everyone sues everyone the whole time. I'm joined down the line by George Freeman, Executive Director of the Media Law Resource Centre. George, good evening. America is a far more litigious society than we are, but does Trump actually have grounds, legal grounds, in your view, in Florida to sue the BBC?
I think he has grounds, but I think it's a difficult lawsuit, as most lawsuits brought by public officials or public figures are in the United States, where we have one layer more of protections for the media than in the rest of the world, including the UK. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. The Supreme Court had a similar case about 30 years ago against the New Yorker magazine, and they said that basically there has to be a gross distortion in a case like this for the case to have any sort of legs. And I think one really has to examine the tape that the BBC put on the air and the actual transcript of what Trump said that day to determine whether there was a gross distortion. Even if there was a gross distortion and the meaning was changed substantially, they still have to find actual malice, which is the New York Times v. Sullivan test, which is that was the intent, that was in the mind of the editors who did it, that they didn't do it carefully. They didn't splice these things together just because they were in a hurry or just because it happened to be that way, but they did it knowing that there would be a gross distortion, and they did it anyhow. So that's a tough test, and how do you prove that? So the answer is it's possible, but I think the plaintiff faces a lot of burdens to do so. And I would also just caution too. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm going to say, George, in our country, you can sue for defamation, you can sue for libel, and your top payout will be £1 million or £2 million. I mean, this is $1 billion. I mean, he's rather over-egging the pudding, isn't he?
I think that's meaningless. When I was at the New York Times, it had a philosophy, a rule, that they would never put in a story the damage amount that was being sought in the complaint, because it's a meaningless number. It doesn't mean anything. It's just what a lawyer throws in there. So it's funny, I've seen all these headlines, including yours, it's on the air right now, about $1 billion, and it's irrelevant. So it's something the Times thought shouldn't even be published, although I noticed it was published today in their story about this very matter. So, but it doesn't mean anything. So I wouldn't get scared because of that number. In fact, I think proving damages will be very difficult. I mean, a month after this ran, or a couple of weeks after this ran,
he won.
He got 73 million votes and he won the election. And where are the damages? I think that'll be hard to show.
George, I think you're right, and I thank you for joining me down the line. Thank you very much indeed. Well, that point from George Freeman, of course, to sue and win, you have to prove actual harm, and it's going to be rather difficult to do that. But he's angry with the BBC, and do you know what? He's got every right to be angry with the BBC. I'm joined this evening by my usual Tuesday panel of Sir Reynold Jar-Wardner and Joe Phillips. Joe, is he right to sue the BBC?
No, but this is what he would do, isn't it? He's just, he wants to be in the headlines. He wants to write everything in capital letters. It's the equivalent of green ink on lined paper, pressing so hard.
He's very good at it.
Well, yeah, he gets a lot of coverage, but, all spoiled children do. But, the point is, it wasn't shown in America. It wasn't available because BBC iPlayer is not available in America, or not available outside of the UK. Nobody in this country, or as far as I know anywhere else, complained about it when it was broadcast over a year ago. And I think, given that apparently there were 20 complaints that were upheld about Martine Croxall rolling her eyes about pregnant people, there were no complaints. I mean, there is no doubt that it's damaging, and as we discussed last week, it's appalling journalism. And all you needed to do was to put a swipe in the same way as if you were writing it in print, you would put a ... between the two quotes.
Of course, I put the question out there. I'm teasing a bit.
Yeah.
Of course, it's nonsense. But I get it. He's very, very upset. He's very, and genuinely angry, and he's got every right to be.
No, absolutely.
And we all agree on that. Ed Davey seems to think the BBC can do no wrong. It's an odd position for the Lib Dem leader to take.
Well, the BBC is made up of human beings. It has had some catastrophic errors, and I would say that actually, although this is awful, it is nowhere near on the scale of the Jimmy Savile scandal, which had real victims.
And persisted for years.
And went on for years and years and years, where people were ignored, and there are echoes of the Rotherham grooming gangs and all of that stuff, which we discuss frequently. So on the scale of, 1 to 10, I would say this is probably about 7, if Savile was 10 out of 10. It is an opportunity for the government to really get a grip and the BBC, because the BBC charter is up for renewal 2027. Now, what they need to do, now Tim Davie has gone and Deborah Turness has gone, is actually make sure that the next Director General has got a journalistic background. And what I would do if I was sorting it out is to bring in somebody, a respected broadcast journalist, somebody like Dorothy Byrne, who used to be at Channel 4, come in, do a sort of a Louise Casey type review and get to grips with this overburdensome management structure that ignores people going, hang on a minute,
Ranald, the last time I came up, Nadine Dorries was the Culture Secretary, and she said, look, this is the last time we can go on with the licence fee structure as it is. Fundamental change is needed. But is it going to happen?
Probably not. Look, I think there is a place for a national broadcaster.
But does it need to do entertainment? Does it need to do sport?
So this is the point. So there is I'm sure a role for the BBC going forward, but it does try and compete in too many commercial areas. For example, BBC Radio 1 Extra and whatever else that they might do. There are plenty of commercial radio stations that do the same and probably do it better. But that's not to say the BBC doesn't do some things really well, and so there is probably a role for it. But, this sort of incident isn't just a one-off. And, whether this incident is 7 out of 10 or not, there are so many others that are 7 out of 10.
Trump is the final straw in this. These errors have been compounded. The licence fee is rumoured to be going up to £181 a year. It just doesn't fit with the modern world, does it?
No, it doesn't, but it is a very tiny amount when you think what you get for that. And, whether you can argue that David Attenborough or Strictly Come Dancing or Celebrity Traitors or all the radio services, whether you like Radio 1 Extra or you want to listen to Radio...
We're paying for a state broadcaster, Joe, on paying to go to prison. This is...
it's the way it's collected.
This is ridiculous.
It's a problem, right? The fact that they have the ability as a private agency to have criminal sanction on people. That is a particular problem. And they're very wasteful in the way they collect it as well.
Yeah, they are wasteful, and it is a ridiculous thing.
It's out of date.
It's out of date. It's a bit like dog licences, which I think are, you used to buy by postal
7 and 6 they were.
7 and 6. Yeah, thank you. But I think, yes, you're right, it does need looking at, and I think there are very valid questions about the commercial arm of the BBC, because don't forget the programmes that we export, like the David Attenborough series, for instance, brings in money and is incredibly important to the soft power that Britain has around the world.
Well, that's OK, and I get it, but I think actually more important than that is the BBC Foreign Service, which I think has a long history, which of course is not funded by the licence fee, is funded by the Foreign Office.
Exactly.
But don't we need to massively slim down BBC, Ranald?
We certainly need to slim it down. Quite how far that goes, I don't know, because I'm not in the BBC. I've not looked at this policy in particular detail. But absolutely, the BBC does too much and doesn't do it well enough. And I think it could do less and do it much better. Take the World Service as a brilliant example. it should be there as a beacon for the world over.
Yeah, and soft power.
It should be there as soft power. Unfortunately, too often it talks Britain down, and that's not the soft power that I think we need to be able to articulate around the world. Yet too often the World Service talks Britain down, and that's a great shame.
Well,
and then when you've got channels like BBC...
Insomniacs at home will have an opinion on the World Service.
I would just say, you know, when we went into COVID lockdown, the BBC was absolutely brilliant at stepping up immediately with education programmes for kids who are out of school, and that sort of service is, I mean, it's there because...
we don't mind the public service, we're sick of the bias.
Yes, and I think that's where you
We're sick of the bias.
You need strong editorial, journalistic...
But isn't the problem the culture within the BBC itself?
But I think I think somebody said, I can't remember who it was, but who said, you know, it's a small head with a big body. And I think that's true.
You've got a cabal of ideological activists who've been driving, for example, the transit...
Well, you know something, Joe, I discovered yesterday that the former chief executive of Plaid, the Welsh nationalists, has now become a director at BBC Wales.
Well, there we are.
That just says everything about the ingrained left-wing bias that I see throughout the BBC.
Except you've got Robbie Gibbs.
One person.
You've got one person. Yes.
One person.
But you also had to have Samir Shah to come in to replace Richard Sharp, who was appointed by Boris Johnson, who had to step back from that position because of dubious dealings. I mean, maybe...
The more we discuss this, the worse it is.
But it shouldn't be political appointments.
No. Hang on. Because if it wasn't appointed by the Prime Minister of the day, the BBC would appoint its own chairman, and we know where that would go. So at least there is some accountability.
Hey, you know, there is a blessing. It's not Nadine Dorris who thought that Channel 4 was publicly funded when she was culture secretary.
Well, it has a public service broadcasting remit.
Yes, but it's not funded by...
Oh, you see, you can't argue with Liberals then. Right, now, in a moment, we'll talk about the Epping court judgment. A lot of very upset people in Epping today, including the father of that 14-year-old girl. But I wonder, did they get their legal case right? All of that in just a moment. There you go.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I asked you, is Trump right to sue the BBC? Judy says, of course Trump is right to sue the BBC. He is the victim here, who has had his name and reputation defamed by a supposedly neutral national news outlet. This appears to be intentional bias by the BBC. And Gary says the BBC may have its faults, but next to the monarchy, it is the last great British institution. It would be a mighty shame to lose it, and I think we'd live to regret it. Just look at the US media landscape for a glimpse into our future without the BBC. Was interesting, wasn't it, to hear Caroline Leavitt, the president's spokesperson in the White House, saying to British viewers, maybe they should watch GB News instead. Anyway, enough of the self-advertising. Now, we've had the ruling over the Bell Hotel, and basically the judge has said that the legal duty of the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, to provide accommodation for asylum seekers outweighed local concerns. There'll be debate about the legal grounds that were chosen, but the fact is the father of the abused 14-year-old girl is very, very angry indeed. And back again in the studio is Shane Yerrill, Epping Independent Councillor and a spokesman on behalf of the family. You've got a statement, Shane, for us.
I have, yeah. To give the verdict today of all days, when we are remembering our fallen soldiers, just creates another level of pain. I speak on behalf of any and every father who has been in a similar situation. I speak on behalf of everyone in Epping who has come out week in, week out to try and get this hotel shut down because of the incidents that have happened. All the government wants to do is keep turning a blind eye and forget about it. Well, we won't forget about it. We will keep on fighting until we get some proper justice. 17 weeks for 5 counts of sexual assault is disgusting on any level. Then mistakenly letting a man out onto our streets and putting all of our children's lives in danger, putting my daughter in danger again, bringing back all of the trauma from the day it happened again. My message to the government and the Home Office: this is all on you. And now, anything that happens to another child in this country as a result of an illegal immigrant is all on you, as you have failed to protect your own people and put in safeguarding measures to protect them. You can't put in the appropriate measures to stop people crossing our borders. You know nothing about these people, but you have fought to keep them in this hotel. How much do you think that hurts me and hurts my daughter? When you go home tonight and look at your own children, ask yourselves, how would you feel in my position?
Shane, thank you. Very, very, very strong words. He's clearly very, very angry.
He's really upset. Yeah, we went into the day quite positive. I spoke to him in the morning. Yeah, we both felt like Epping Forest was going to win the injunction, but yeah, it's gutting now, and it just adds another insult to the family that have been insulted several times.
And you know, you're a local councillor. The mood of the local community.
Yeah, there's a emergency protest tonight as a result of this. A lot of local parents are disgusted, the same as the family are. They just don't understand. Everyone's hoping for a lifeline, and unfortunately that didn't come.
Difficult, isn't it, Joe, not to sympathise?
Oh, absolutely. And when we last heard from Shane, I mean, your heart breaks for the victim and the family, and I do hope that she is getting, and they are getting, proper support, and support so that she's not going to spend the rest of her life being defined by this. I mean, I think I said last time, she will never get over it, but that it has to be not all of her life. And in a way, the more this happens, the harder it is to move on, isn't it, really? But I don't know whether you were involved in the case, Shane, as a councillor, but it seems to me that Epping Council have gone about it the wrong way, because they've gone in on planning grounds, and it was not a breach of planning to have a block booking on a hotel. It's not a change of use.
Yeah, I mean, whether they chose the right legal means or not, and slightly share your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But Ranald, it's a very interesting debate, this, isn't it? You know, you have a local elected council, a representative of it sitting in the room with us. They don't want this blooming thing there, but national government decides that it has to happen. It does raise a lot of questions about the helplessness, frankly, of local communities in a situation like this.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, whether or not, you know, I'm not a lawyer, whether or not planning law was the right approach, I don't know. But it's interesting, isn't it, that planning law can come to get all of us when we might want to do an extension to our homes. But if the government of the day wants to change things, suddenly it can conveniently be forgotten. So, look, I think there's a fair argument still for them to have tried that. I think the bigger point is, as you say, that local communities now have no say, and this proves it, on what's happening, given that this government has presided over an increase, a higher level of illegal immigrants than ever, or it seems that way anyway, and the fact that more and more people are being put up at taxpayers' expense all across this country. Nothing is actually happening to tackle this problem, and more communities are suffering. They're not willing to take the
about
tough decisions.
2,000 people came over the sort of long weekend.
Yeah, and they're not willing to take the tough decisions to deal with this. First of all, to actually deport illegal migrants. Second, to make sure that if people are here, that they're being housed in, for example, military accommodation, perhaps in temporary accommodation on military sites, that they are contained, controlled, so that crimes can't be committed in the community. None of these difficult decisions are being grappled with. They're just choosing the easy option and promising jam tomorrow, saying we will close the hotels down, I promise.
But I mean, this is not just a Labour problem. It's been going on for years. The numbers are
not
out of control.
And this scale and the damage it's doing to communities is totally different. I mean, it's got significantly worse. And unlike, look, we didn't get everything right. I've said that before on the show. I know. But, you know, unlike us, at least we were trying to do something with the Rwanda scheme. Yes, we weren't able to prove that it worked. We happen to think it did and that it would. They've got no plan at all. They said they're smashing the gangs.
Smash the gangs.
And they've not done it.
But Rwanda was not an answer while you let the backlog of asylum claims build up, which absolutely put so many people in hotels in the first place.
Can I just come in there? I think the problem is as well, our actual Home Office come out and said that the human rights of asylum seekers outweighs the concerns of local people. Now that everybody now feels second best. We shouldn't feel second best to people that came here illegally.
No, absolutely. Correct. And it is, I think the ruling last time round was that the Home Office duties under international law outweigh those. But, you know, you would have the same argument, which we might take a different view on, if you want to build a piece of hugely expensive infrastructure and the government of the day said, I'm sorry, this is really important infrastructure, whether it's HS2 or whatever.
Joe, I get that point. But the difference between an inconvenient or ugly piece of infrastructure and this situation is the safety of kids on the street. And that is a very fundamental...
And the perceived.
Very fundamental thing. Shane, I don't know what to say, really. I mean, I guess you can appeal, but...
There is the option of going to the Supreme Court, but it's again and the cost and the thought of the further rejection. The frustration is already very high.
And the cost.
Yeah, exactly. The cost to local.
I mean, was this bill picked up by Epping Council?
I think it will be now, because we've lost. So, as far as I understand, it will be. But it's the thought of further rejection. I don't think people locally and the family can't take much more now.
No. Well, I want you to please give our full sympathies to the family, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
As a spokesman for them, and folks at home, that was a really very, very powerful, very angry statement that we had there from the father. The Home Office have replied by saying, we are furious at the level of illegal migrants and asylum hotels in this country. Really? This government will close every asylum hotel. Work is well underway to move asylum seekers into more suitable accommodations, such as military bases, to ease pressure on communities across this country. We are working to do so as swiftly as possible as part of an orderly planned sustained programme. This judgment allows us to do just that. There you are. I won't comment on it. I frankly, these statements, I frankly think they're beneath contempt. Nothing is being done to change any of this situation. It is getting worse and worse. The country is getting angrier and angrier. And frankly, that makes for quite a dangerous situation. In a moment, we're going to get a top pollster in to talk about our attitudes towards deportation, but also to talk about the extraordinary hypocrisy of individual politicians on this great issue.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
A lot of fine weather at the moment across the Med, but whilst it's warm in Spain, there is some wet and windy weather moving through Madeira, approaching the Channel Islands and also affecting Portugal. Later, that's going to push through parts of Spain, but ahead of it we've got a southerly airflow and above average temperatures, a lot of sunshine through Italy into Greece as well. Keen breeze here, 1 or 2 showers, and you can see that unsettled weather affecting Tenerife on Thursday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Good evening. It's time for your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through the next 24 hours, there will be more rain to come for many places, but also some dry and bright weather, particularly across a central slice of the UK. Now, we currently have an area of low pressure out towards the west, and this is driving some blustery winds and some wet weather due to a frontal system that's marching its way across. We have a front clearing away towards the north as we go overnight, but lingering across the far north of Scotland, and then a front pushing eastwards, but also lingering across some southern southeastern parts, so a fair bit of rain to come. But in between those two wetter areas where things will stay pretty mild, there's some drier, clearer weather, and here things could turn a little fresh. Some rural spots could drop into low single figures perhaps. But in the south, where we have this cloud and rain, it is going to be a wet and blustery start to the day for many places. The rain could be quite heavy, particularly in the southwest. Across much of Wales and central England, dry but cloudy to start. Brighter across much of Northern Ireland, Northern England and southern Scotland. Across the rest of Scotland, though, quite cloudy, outbreaks of rain, and some of the rain could be a little bit heavy at times as well. As we go through the day, some of that rain across parts of Scotland, well, that's going to continue, may edge a little bit further southwards towards the borders area. Meanwhile, the heavier, more persistent rain in the south, that pushes its way northwards, and that's going to spread across Wales, the Midlands and into northern England later on as well. It is still mild out there at the moment, especially so towards the southeast. Once that rain clears away, there'll be some brightness, and so we're looking at temperatures reaching around 16 Celsius. Then Thursday, a bit of a messy day for many places. Some rain across parts of Scotland, northern England and Northern Ireland. A bit of rain in the far south of England as well. Dry, bright across the Midlands and Wales and the far north of Scotland, seeing a few showers. And then on Friday, colder air pushing into northern parts. Meanwhile, some heavy rain and strong winds affecting some southern areas. Bye-bye.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Well, perhaps not surprisingly, after the last segment that we did about the Bell Hotel in Epping and the anger of the father, things are changing when the British public are asked in an opinion poll, do you support the deportation of illegal immigrants? You start to get some really very, very big numbers. Yep, 66% support, compared, interestingly, to 50% in America, where they are actually doing it. Well, I'm joined by Tom Lubbock, co-founder of JL Partners. All of this, Tom, indicates that the public have just had enough.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you look at those numbers between the UK and the US, we asked the exact same question in the UK and the US, and the British public are actually much more likely than the US public to say they want all illegal immigrants deported.
All of them?
Huge numbers, all of them, regardless of how they came here.
Right, and so what interests me, Tom, I mean, fine, I see that. What interests me is what's the change in trend? How quickly is this number increasing?
If you'd done this research 10 years ago, you'd got nothing like this. It really is the small boats crisis. I think something like 2,000 people crossed last week on small boats.
In 4 days. Yeah.
The public, even if it's not in the news every single day, the public are really tuned into this. They're really shrewd. It violates their sense of fairness. And so these numbers have been trending in completely the wrong direction if you're in government for quite some time now.
Now, I wonder when the public hear about this, what they'll think. This, folks, and you won't have heard of this before, is the Home Office Returns Reintegration Programme. So we're going to return you somewhere and we're going to help you before you get there with support getting to the airport. We'll provide funding. We'll help to resettle you. We'll give you counselling for mental health. We'll help accessing education, vocational training, or even business startup support. I mean, I can't even imagine the result if you said to people, those that do get deported will be given all of this assistance.
Yeah, I think it's really, really difficult providing any kind of assistance to someone who's come here illegally to then go home, a financial incentive. That, again, just that sense of fairness that the British public have. They're not cruel. They don't want to hurt anyone. They don't want bad things to happen. They just don't think it's fair that people jump the queue and come here.
Isn't that the word, Randall? Fair. Absolutely. It's not fair. It's a sort of... It's one of those phrases that we use in our everyday life that we're brought up with. In fact, as kids, we often complain, it's not fair. But there's a real feeling here, it's not fair.
Absolutely, and so this is not fair to people who are born here, are British citizens by birth. It's also not fair to the people who've come here legally who pay tens of thousands of pounds. That's why it's not fair. People play by the rules, whoever they are, and they see other people getting all of the things given to them on a plate, having broken them. And I think it's really fascinating that this is across almost every single political party as well. You know, 84% of Conservative and Reform voters support it, but also 65% of Liberal Democrat voters support it, 63% of Labour supporters. I think that is fascinating. That the idea that I remember some of my old colleagues said, you know, oh, the people on, you know, in the centre won't like us being tougher on illegal immigration. Well, actually, this proves that they were wrong.
The centre's moving very rapidly on this.
The centre's like jelly at the moment. But I do actually think that the point that Ronald makes is really significant, that people who have come here and are here legally are actually facing the worst backlash because they're being, you know, the foment and racism that's being stirred up in certain quarters is actually affecting them far more than it's affecting us. So I think that's a really important point. I mean, it's interesting, but not surprising, Tom, that the views of people in this country are much stronger, apparently, than in America, because it is on the news pretty much every day. You know, people can see it happening here, whereas, you know, parts of America, it probably gets no coverage at all.
I wonder whether the increase, and you know, we see more news reporting of crimes committed by those who come here illegally. Is that a part of this?
I think, look, this is the thing, if you let these problems fester, if you let these unfairnesses fester with the public for long enough, they will read all sorts of things, all sorts of trends get merged together. It's just a terrible, terrible thing for the state to allow to happen from a public opinion point of view. It will just lead to bad things. As you say, Joe, racism, terrible things like that. Much better to nip it in the bud, stop it whatever way you can, and then the public will be happier.
And how interesting, though, the sheer hypocrisy of some people. Now, the What the Farage moment is Rachel Millward, who is the deputy leader of the Green Party. And here she was a short time ago talking about asylum seekers.
There will be a day when we sit our grandchildren on our knees and we tell them, first they came for the immigrants. So we hung out flags from all the nations and we said, refugees are welcome here.
Refugees are welcome here. Oh, unless it's where Rachel Millward lives. Well, we couldn't possibly have that now, could we? Now, that would never, ever do. Because, as she says, quite clearly, accommodating 600 men on one site with no right to work brings significant risk. She even said that the safety of local communities could not be properly safeguarded. I mean, what can you say? What can you say, Randall?
It is shocking, and it shows, doesn't it, that the people who espouse these policies have no connection with the real experiences of so many people across this country, including, sadly, the folks in Epping. You know, these are the people on the front line suffering the consequences of what this government is doing to us.
No hypocrisy from the Lib Dems. They want as many to come as possible.
That's not true, Nigel.
Well, I think it is.
That's exactly their policy.
I think it is.
Their policy.
No.
What is it then?
The Lib Dems are not in favour of illegal, but they want safe, secure, legal routes.
What, so double or triple the numbers coming?
Not necessarily,
So
because if people can apply for asylum properly, then you can deal with it more quickly.
I don't know. Final thought. We'll go back to our pollster because he's a bit
Well,
more
I just
neutral
want to
than this
make a
lot.
point, though, just on the thing
Go
that Tom said about letting things fester. I think it's really important that we make it clear that what you were talking about the resettlement help, that's it's an expression of or call for expression of interest from organisations, and the government only want charities, not commercial businesses, it says on the website, to provide support. Now, some of that support is fairly straightforward. Taking somebody to an airport or getting somebody and all of that. No, all of those sorts of things. And it is capped at £3,000. And if somebody is going back, let's say, to Syria, for instance, where Germany now deems it safe, and I think we are actually in the process of saying that, then that's not unreasonable.
I don't know, £3,000 to go back to some of those countries is quite a lot. Tom, has political polling... I mean, this is the most volatile period for what, decades?
I think for a very, very long time, we've just seen the volatility measured any way you want, go up and up and up. We're in a multi-party system. I think anything could happen in the next few years.
Thunderbirds used to say that at the start of the programme.
Yes.
Anything could happen. Yes. Tom, thank you for joining us. In a minute, I will tell you why I think every history lesson you ever had about the Treaty of Versailles being the cause of all the misery of World War II, etc., is wrong. I think we got the armistice wrong. I'll tell you why in just a moment.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and wanted to have an open discussion?
My name's Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken.
How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Well, it's 107 years on from the armistice, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, and I was pleased this Sunday, Remembrance Sunday, to be in Walton on the Naze, in the northern part of my constituency, where last year the parade was cancelled for insurance reasons. This year it happened. There was a very, very big turnout, and I was really thrilled to be a part of it, particularly as the little town of Walton honours one of its men who won a Victoria Cross, a machine gunner who, during the great German advance of 1918, turned to the rest of the machine gun crew and said, "Off you go, lads, I can handle this." So that was really quite something. So this was me on Sunday in Walton. Now, those scenes were taking place all over the country, and I have to say there was a 99-year-old ex-Royal Scot who was a lot fitter than me when he went up to lay his wreath. And we understand why everybody wanted the war to end. But there was one man who thought we were making the most terrible mistake. His name was Jack Pershing, and he was the American general in charge of the American army. And here he is, actually on the 11th of November in 1918. Here's a quote from him from just a few weeks afterwards. He says, "We shouldn't have done it. If they'd given us another 10 days, we would have rounded up the entire German army, captured it, humiliated it. The German troops today are marching back to Germany, announcing they've never been defeated. What I dread is that Germany doesn't know she's been licked." He allegedly said to staff officers on that day that he feared we'd all be back here in 20 years' time. Indeed, it was 21 years. Now, you've got to understand that the British had had enough. Whilst we were advancing, we were losing 1,000 men a day. France had been, ruined. The young manhood of France had been ruined. We understand why they wanted an end to it. But, you know, he was right. Pershing was right. We should have gone on. Whether it was 10 days, whether it was 4 weeks, I don't know. But just think about this. When Adolf Hitler and the National Socialists get going, they launch the beer hall putsch. Who is it that's leading the procession? There's an image here, and it's a quite astonishing image. There is Adolf Hitler in 1924 going to trial after the putsch. Standing next to him in full rig is Field Marshal Ludendorff, the victor over Russia on the Eastern Front, the man that almost in April 1918 won the First World War against us. And he talks about the stab in the back. He talks about the undefeated army. And so I think that actually the armistice was a mistake. We should have gone on and made the Germans unconditionally surrender, rather than a sort of almost half-gentlemanly way out, followed by a treaty that was somewhat vindictive. I don't know what you think of my history theory, Jo, but it's one that I've had for years.
Yes, and you're not alone. And it is one that is controversial, but it is also, like all history lessons, you have the benefit of hindsight. I mean, the question that I would ask is, had the Kaiser not stepped down on the 9th of November, had he hung on, would we have signed the armistice 2 days later? Now, it may not have made any difference, but if he had hung on, there would have been more impetus to keep going. And, of course, there is a very well-rehearsed argument that the Treaty of Versailles, which excluded Germany and Austria and others, was, as you say, vindictive. And that was what led to, or empowered Hitler to say, look how badly we've been treated.
I agree how badly we've been treated, but the significance of Ludendorff in that photograph and the birth of National Socialism was very much ex-soldiers. Ranald, what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, like Jo said, clearly Britain was losing 1,000 men a day, as you say, and that's a tough thing for anyone to stomach as a leader when there is an alternative available. And so I think, in hindsight, yes, but at the time, people will have had different thoughts in their mind. But I do think there's also a question, even if the armistice has not been agreed, even if the Treaty of Versailles had not been harsh as it was, and those are two separate questions, clearly Germany would have been in a very depressed state. And there's nothing to say that what happened would not have happened anyway. The fact that Germany would have been in a very economically depressed state, the fact that they would have been humiliated either way, might still have led to National Socialism rising and the Second World War
wouldn't have led
occurring.
to the myth of the stab in the back, would it?
Fair.
Yeah, the politicians have stabbed us in the back.
Fair.
Ludendorff, my undefeated army, despite the fact they were being driven back day after day after day.
But part of the rhetoric was that Germany was a great country and deserved to basically take over the whole of Europe. And that's a different argument from politicians that stabbed us in the back.
Jacob Rees-Mogg is here. He's itching to get involved in this debate. Fascinating thing, Jacob, before we get your theory on this. Pershing was so angry about the armistice that on November the 11th itself, he launched a massive offensive and 3,500 American soldiers died on the 11th of November. So it's almost incomprehensible to us now. And he had to answer to Congress, of course, after that. But was Pershing right?
It's such an interesting question. And obviously very difficult to get an authoritative answer to. I wonder, though, whether the greater problem isn't Versailles, and that if that was going to be done and the reparations set at the levels they were set at, there was always going to be the opportunity for saying, we have been betrayed. Not necessarily betrayed because the politicians pulled the rug from the army, but betrayed because the politicians had agreed and accepted, had enforced upon them, a treaty that was unfair. I wonder if you go back and you were Pershing and you were able to stop the armistice, whether actually what you wanted to do at Versailles was to split Germany up and put it back where it had been before Bismarck created Germany.
The pre-1870.
Absolutely right, because Germany, once it's united, is a menace for the first 70, 80 years of its existence. And it must surely have been tempting to think, let's just put it back to principalities that conspire against each other, that have their own internal difficulties and don't have this united strength.
Did anyone propose that we know of?
I think they thought of it after the Second World War, didn't they? They thought of dividing Germany up.
But then, of course, it all changed with the Russians.
And then it all changed with the Russians. But no, I don't think it was discussed after the First World War. But I think that may well have been the one way of changing the politics so that they could rule themselves independently but not unite with the strength that Hitler was able to bring together.
And it is a lesson, isn't it, for today and for forever, that when you are doing the deal after the ceasefire, you need to make sure...
And wasn't this the failure in Iraq and so on?
Yeah,
what do you do once you've won?
I mean, Churchill's be magnanimous in victory obviously was taking a lesson from Versailles, but also, the other side need to know they're beaten. And that was Pershing's great fear. Again, if we go all the way back to November 1918. To my panel, as ever, thank you very much indeed. It's been, I have to say, a really, really remarkable day, because now there's actually a service at the Cenotaph that takes place at 11 o'clock on the 11th of November. And I was pleased to be there. It was, in fact, the 31st that the Western Front Association have done. So that was very, very good.
It's been brought back, hasn't it? Because immediately after the First World War it happened. But I think the late Queen wanted everything to focus on Remembrance Sunday, not on Armistice Day. And that now Armistice Day has...
Well, now we do both.
Well, now we do both,
And in fact, on train stations, they announce at 11 o'clock you observe the silence.
But isn't it interesting that we are better at remembering now than we were when there were still some old soldiers from the First World War?
My theory on that, Jacob, is a lot of them didn't want to talk about it and wanted to forget. Perhaps that's the reason.
Yes, indeed.
In brief,
what are we going to be
tonight,
talking about? The economy and how Rachel Reeves has bunged it all up, unemployment.
Not the armistice. And
not the armistice. No, I'd love to continue. But we better have some variety in our programming schedules.
Sorry, go on. So, Rachel Reeves.
Rachel Reeves, the bad news on unemployment, wages going up in the public sector by much more than in the private sector, spending going up faster than tax revenues are coming in. It is a homegrown economic failure. And a veteran interview. A lady of 101, Grace Taylor, is on an interview at the end of the programme. She was a gunner girl, amazing, in the Second World War.
Terrific. Well, that's it from me. Back with you live tomorrow night here on GB News at 7 p.m. with more theories for you to think about. But first, let's have a look at the all-important weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. It's time for your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through the next 24 hours, there will be more rain to come for many places, but also some dry and bright weather, particularly across a central slice of the UK. Now, we currently have an area of low pressure out towards the west, and this is driving some blustery winds and some wet weather due to a frontal system that's marching its way across. We have a front clearing away towards the north as we go overnight, but lingering across the far north of Scotland, and then a front pushing eastwards, but also lingering across some southern southeastern parts, so a fair bit of rain to come. But in between those two wetter areas where things will stay pretty mild, there's some drier, clearer weather, and here things could